Imagine walking into a room and shifting the energy without speaking a word. You don't touch anyone, you don't make eye contact. Yet something changes. People's attitudes soften, tensions dissolve, and cooperation seems to flow naturally. What just happened? This is not charisma, it's not manipulation. It's the untapped potential of silent influence, an internal force that moves outward and shapes external outcomes. Modern psychology shows us that nonverbal cues account for more than 90% of our communication. But what if our influence goes deeper than gestures or facial expressions? Scientific research has begun to explore the possibility that thoughts themselves carry measurable energy. Studies in neurocardiology and quantum cognition suggest that intention has observable effects on others, even when not expressed out loud. While this challenges conventional thinking, it aligns with timeless teachings that say, reality reflects the mind that perceives it. But let's get practical. Every day you interact with co-workers, family, friends, even strangers. These people respond to you, but often not to what you say. They react to your energy, your emotional baseline, your assumptions, your silent expectations. Whether you're aware of it or not, you're always sending out signals, and those signals are shaping your world. Here's the core idea. How you internally perceive someone alters how they respond to you, not through force, not through persuasion, but through a shift in your inner narrative. You don't have to convince anyone to change. You only need to see them differently, consistently, genuinely, and without contradicting yourself. This isn't about pretending. It's about tuning your mind to a different version of reality and watching others begin to reflect it. When you stop reacting to people as they were and start relating to them as they could be, change begins. Not because they suddenly decide to act better, but because your perception acts like a mirror they instinctively align with. Silent influence is real. It's not mystical. It's mental discipline rooted in awareness and intention. And once you learn how to use it deliberately, the dynamics around you begin to evolve without a single word spoken. If you're enjoying this perspective and want more insights like this, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps us grow and keeps this kind of content coming your way. The moment you change how you see someone, you change how they show up in your life. That may sound abstract, but it's a psychological fact. Human behavior is largely shaped by social feedback. When you hold a fixed internal image of a person, your reactions, micro-expressions, and energy align with that image, even if you're unaware of it. And people, consciously or not, respond to that alignment. What most don't realize is how much power lies in this feedback loop. If you expect someone to disappoint you, you subtly prepare for it. You become guarded, your tone shifts, your eyes narrow, and in return, the other person reacts defensively or withdraws. The result? A self-fulfilling prophecy, one that you unconsciously triggered. But what happens when you reverse that process? Start by seeing the version of them that matches the outcome you want. Not as wishful thinking, but as a baseline expectation. Not, I hope they'll be supportive, but they're capable of support, and I'm choosing to relate to that. You don't need to announce this shift. You just hold it internally with calm conviction. This is the foundation of self-persuasion, convincing your own mind first before attempting to shift anyone else. It requires consistency. You must stop replaying old narratives in your head. You can't see someone as resistant one moment and expect them to respond openly the next. The change must begin with how you frame the person inside your own mind. Recent studies in interpersonal psychology confirm that expectations influence outcomes. Teachers who are told that certain students are gifted even when they're not consistently see better performance from those students. The reason? Their belief subtly changes how they interact, and the student responds accordingly. This same principle applies to personal and professional relationships. If you want someone to show up differently, you must first retire the mental version of them that no longer serves your connection. Replace it with a version rooted in respect, clarity, and mutual growth. Then, let your energy do the rest. Influence begins inside. When your perception changes, your entire relational ecosystem starts to realign, with no words necessary. Most people think of influence as something external, a speech, a gesture, a persuasive argument. But beneath the surface, influence operates at a much deeper level. Thoughts, though invisible, generate measurable effects in the real world. And this is not just spiritual theory, it's a growing area of interest in modern science. Research in neuroscience has revealed that the human brain is constantly picking up on subtle cues, many of which are non-verbal and energetic. A 2021 study from the Social Cognitive and Affective Neuroscience Journal showed that humans can detect emotional states from others in less than 0.2 seconds, even when no words are spoken. The brain processes energy, intention, and emotional cues far faster than logic. But what if thoughts themselves emit influence? Some physicists and cognitive scientists have begun exploring what's called field consciousness theory. The idea is simple but profound. Your thoughts create energetic fields that extend beyond your body. These fields subtly interact with the environment and influence the behavior of people within them. While this concept is still controversial, numerous experiments, including those conducted by the HeartMath Institute, suggest that coherent thought and emotion patterns can synchronize group behavior, even without direct interaction. This means your mindset, your expectations, and your emotional frequency are not private. They leak into your surroundings, and others often unconsciously adjust to those signals. This explains why some individuals walk into a room and instantly change its atmosphere. They're not doing anything obvious. Their thoughts are simply organized, focused, and consistent. Others sense it and respond without knowing why. Influence doesn't begin with action. It begins with mental clarity. When your inner dialogue is aligned with a stable, empowered vision, it radiates outward. It sets a tone. It initiates change, not by force, but by presence. You don't need to dominate a conversation to lead it. You don't have to win arguments to shift behavior. When your thoughts are intentional and your energy coherent, people begin to mirror that state back to you. Real influence is silent. And it always starts with how you think, not what you say. Theory only matters if it holds up in real life. So how does this invisible influence show up in everyday situations, at work, at home, or even in casual encounters? The answer: constantly, whether we notice it or not. Take a workplace example. A manager feels friction with a team member. The employee seems disengaged, resistant to feedback, even uncooperative. The natural response might be a meeting, a performance warning, or a confrontation. But what if instead the manager shifts their internal perception first by mentally framing the employee as capable, solution-oriented, and aligned with the team's goals? Something subtle begins to happen. The manager's body language changes, less guarded, more open. Their tone softens, their assumptions shift, and these micro-adjustments influence how the employee responds. Without discussing the change, the energy of the relationship realigns. The employee starts to participate more actively, suggestions become collaborative, tension fades, all because one person decided to change the lens through which they saw the other. Now apply this to personal relationships. Imagine a longtime friend who's grown distant. Instead of confronting them with expectations or disappointment, what if you begin seeing them internally as understanding, caring, and open again? Not in fantasy, but with deliberate clarity. As you continue to interact with them from that internal framework, you'll notice small changes. Maybe they text more often. Maybe they're more present in conversation. The relationship begins to rebuild. Not from pressure, but from perception. This doesn't work because people read minds. It works because energy is contagious. Your assumptions leak into your presence. Others adjust because they feel something has changed, even if they can't explain what. In one survey conducted by Gallup, 70% of employee engagement was directly tied to their manager's behavior and attitude. This shows how leadership is more about emotional influence than formal authority. It applies to parenting, friendships, and even dating. Before trying to change others, ask, what version of them am I feeding with my thoughts? If the answer no longer aligns with your desired outcome, it's time to update the script in your mind, quietly but powerfully. Harnessing silent influence isn't about wishful thinking. It requires discipline, mental alignment practiced with consistency. Just as physical fitness requires repetition, mental clarity must be trained to become effective. The challenge is that most people live in reactive states. They carry emotional residue from past interactions and allow those memories to color their perception of others. Instead of relating to the present version of a person, they project outdated stories onto them and then feel frustrated when those stories repeat themselves in real life. To change this, you must begin with intention. You choose in advance who you are going to be in the presence of others and how you will perceive them, regardless of past behavior. This is not about denial. It's about consciously selecting the reality you want to reinforce. That decision must be maintained, not just during good moments, but especially during challenges. When someone contradicts the version you're holding of them, your old mental habits will try to reassert themselves. This is where most people lose momentum. They retreat into disappointment instead of staying centered in their chosen perception. But staying centered is the work. It's what creates transformation. Think of your attention as currency. Whatever you pay it to grows. If you continue investing energy in fear, resentment, or doubt, that's what you'll see more of. But if you learn to refocus on calm, potential, and connection, your external world starts to follow suit. This is not theoretical. Cognitive behavioral studies show that consistent shifts in thought patterns create measurable changes in emotional responses and relationship dynamics. Your brain literally rewires when you stop reinforcing negative beliefs and replace them with new mental associations. But here's the key: you can't fake it. The mind detects inconsistency. If you say one thing but believe another, your energy won't support the outcome you want. Integrity between thought, feeling, and action is essential. Silent influence isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering your own narrative so that your presence becomes stable, clear, and magnetic. From there, people naturally adapt, not because they're being manipulated, but because you've created a space where transformation feels safe. There's a moment, often subtle, when you realize your internal work is starting to affect the external world. Someone you've struggled with suddenly behaves differently. An old pattern doesn't repeat itself. A conversation flows where conflict used to live. And you didn't change them. You changed your relationship with the story you told about them. This is the quiet power of mental alignment. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't seek validation. It simply works because thought, emotion, and energy are not confined to your mind. They project into your environment, influencing how others perceive you and how they act around you. You may notice these shifts in small ways at first. A colleague who was distant becomes more collaborative. A partner who seemed distracted starts showing interest again. A friend who once avoided tough conversations begins opening up. These are signs of resonance. Your internal frequency is broadcasting a new signal and others are responding. But to sustain that shift, you must stay consistent. The brain craves patterns, and it will return to old mental habits unless you train it otherwise. That means continuing to perceive others through the lens of potential, even when they momentarily slip back into old behaviors. If you react emotionally, you reinforce the past. If you stay grounded, you reinforce change. It's important to note, this process isn't about controlling outcomes. People still have free will. But by shifting your perception, you change the emotional environment in which they operate. And most human behavior is shaped more by environment than conscious decision. A 2023 behavioral study from Stanford University showed that environmental priming, subtle shifts in perceived expectations, altered participant behavior up to 43% without verbal cues. This aligns with the principle that silent influence is real, measurable, and impactful. So don't underestimate a quiet mind. It's not passive, it's precise. It's not detached, it's intentional. When you align your thoughts with the reality you want to experience, and you hold that alignment steadily, your world bends to match it. This is not magic, it's focus. And most people never realize how powerful that focus becomes until they see someone change and know it began with a single decision made in silence. Every thought you hold carries weight. Every emotional reaction you repeat reinforces a pattern. And when those patterns conflict, you create static, internal noise that weakens your influence, even if your intentions are good. Most people fluctuate between clarity and confusion without noticing. One moment they envision harmony, the next they brace for conflict. One day they trust their power, the next they doubt their worth. This inconsistency isn't just exhausting, it sends mixed signals that confuse others and sabotage results. Imagine trying to tune into a radio station that keeps shifting frequencies. That's how most people experience relationships with those who lack inner alignment. They feel unsure, guarded, unable to fully connect, not because of what's said, but because of what's felt. When your mind is split, your presence becomes unstable. You might say the right words, but the emotional undertone won't match, and people are far more responsive to energy than to language. This is why maintaining mental coherence is essential. Coherence means your thoughts, emotions, and intentions are not competing with one another. They're aligned, moving in the same direction. And that kind of inner order radiates stability. In a 2022 study by the Institute of Noetic Sciences, individuals trained in intentional coherence techniques reported 30% higher interpersonal trust ratings from peers, even when no words were exchanged. Why? Because coherence is perceptible. It creates safety. It builds trust. But coherence requires discipline. It means catching yourself in the act of contradicting your own vision. It means not indulging in doubt, even when old patterns tempt you. And most importantly, it means being honest with yourself. Do my thoughts match the reality I say I want? This level of self-awareness is rare, but it's powerful. Because once you identify your internal contradictions, you can correct them. And when your inner world becomes clear, the outer world begins to mirror that clarity. Influence doesn't come from intensity, it comes from consistency, from being the same person in every room, with every person, because you've already decided who you are, long before you speak. Real change doesn't happen during grand moments. It happens in ordinary situations, during a brief conversation, a glance across the room, a silent assumption that no one notices but everyone feels. This is where silent influence lives, not in dramatic acts, but in small, consistent shifts in how you see and respond to others. Imagine entering a team meeting where dynamics have been tense. You could rehearse what to say, argue your points, or try to control the outcome. Or you could walk in with your perception already aligned, seeing your colleagues as receptive, capable, and collaborative. That subtle mindset shift affects everything: your tone, your pace, your presence. And people feel it, whether they realize it or not. The same applies to your personal life. Picture a family member who often creates tension. Instead of preparing for conflict, imagine them calm, open, and respectful. Approach them with that version in mind, not the one you've argued with in the past. Then observe, not expect, but observe what begins to shift. Over time, the people around you respond not just to your behavior, but to the internal image you project onto them. This isn't manipulation. You're not forcing a reaction. You're offering a different environment, one where new patterns can emerge naturally. This approach also reduces resistance. People resist pressure, they don't resist presence. When you create space for someone to rise to a better version of themselves without demanding it, they often do. Why? Because we all want to be seen as more than our flaws. Your perception gives others permission to grow. In a world overloaded with noise, constant opinions, arguments, and persuasion, silent influence is a quiet advantage. It doesn't require approval. It doesn't depend on timing. It just requires that you take responsibility for your inner state and hold it long enough for others to meet you there. Your influence is never turned off. It's active in every room you enter, every moment you engage, every assumption you carry. Use it deliberately. Use it with care. Because when you shift your energy, you shift the field, and that field shapes everything. Influence doesn't require a stage. It doesn't need volume, charisma, or force. The most powerful form of influence often goes unnoticed because it's silent, internal, and steady. You carry that power with you every day, in your thoughts, in your assumptions, in how you silently define others and yourself. And while the world constantly pulls you to react, to explain, to prove, true influence begins when you stop trying to control what's outside and master what's within. You've seen it happen. A calm person walks into chaos and the energy shifts. A leader says little but creates trust through presence alone. A friend changes your mood without saying a word. None of this is random. It's the result of internal alignment projected outward with consistency. The question isn't whether you influence others. You do. The question is how consciously you do it. Are you reinforcing old versions of people through memory and habit? Or are you choosing to see the potential they haven't stepped into yet? Are you reacting to what they've been or inviting who they could become? Your perception is a mirror that others adjust to. When you shift what that mirror reflects, the people around you begin to shift too. Not because they're forced, but because they're met with something different, something stable, clear, and quiet. That's the essence of silent influence. It doesn't impose, it invites, it doesn't fight, it aligns. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Not as a tactic, but as a way of being. You don't need the perfect words. You don't need to change others. You just need to take full responsibility for your inner state, your focus, your vision, your presence. From that place, change unfolds on its own, because the real work isn't out there. It's in how you think, in how you see, in what you choose to radiate every moment you walk into a room. Speak less, align more, influence fully. If this content made sense to you, don't stop here. Go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content. Now watch this next video where I'll show you another essential step to transform your reality. I'll see you there.